Street. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for Mr. Yashpal Sharma. Welcome, sir. You may take your seat, please.
Let everybody come. No, you can do that.
Next, I would like to invite on stage Mr. Ramesh Mamidala, Head Cargo Air India. With over 30 years in the logistic industry, his expertise spans global functions, including significant roles at Emirates Group and Qatar Airways. Now, as the driving force behind Air India Cargo, he continues to shape the industry with his wealth of experience and innovative approach. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for Mr. Ramesh. Guys, where's the energy? We've all had our lunch and coffee. Let's hear it for them. Next, I would like to invite on stage Mr. Manoj Singh, Chief Cargo Officer, Adani Airports Holding. He's responsible for overall cargo and ground handling of all Adani airports. He has a rich pan-India experience of more than 32 years in aviation, airport management, and supply chain. He has been instrumental in implementing the India's first air cargo community digital platform, AMAX. A big round of applause for Mr. Manoj Singh. Next, I would like to invite on stage Mr. Sanjeev Edward, Chief Executive Officer, Cargo and Logistics, GMR Group.
Welcome,
He
Sanjeev.
spearheads strategic projects and oversees cargo operations across multiple airports. With over 20 years in aviation, he's a proven leader in driving growth and innovation. Let's hear it for Mr. Sanjeev Edward. Next, I would like to invite on stage Mr. Krishna Prabhu, Senior Director, Business Head, Air Surface Express and Warehousing, Flipkart. He's a seasoned supply chain professional with experience spanning 20 plus years across organizations like Flipkart, Reliance Retail, and Titan. He has donned many hats across operations, business development, and customer experience roles in the span of his career. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for Mr. Krishna Prabhu. Our last speaker for this session, I would like to call on stage Mr. Surendra Deodar, Head Supply Chain Management, Reliance Life Sciences. With over 35 years of industry experience, he's a seasoned expert in sourcing, procurement, and materials management. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it from Mr. Surendra Deodar. Over to you, Mr. Sharma. Have a wonderful panel discussion.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. I don't see energy in this room, and this session is going to be all about air cargo. Air cargo is a lot about energy. It's about thrust. It's about lots and lots of efficiency. You know, my name is Yash, and I am also the president of ACFI, and it's my responsibility also to talk extensively on air cargo. I am sold on this product, and as you see, we come right at the fag end of today. Air cargo kind of plays a similar role when everything has happened, and that's something that is left around and nobody else can do it. We come in and we deliver, right? So that's us. That's air cargo. That's the air cargo industry for you. That we are here to make sure dreams reach from one corner of the world to another corner of the world. Whatever gets manufactured in any part of the world, air cargo can put it on the shelves in the quickest possible time. No other means of transportation comes close to us. And that's what the power of air cargo is. So ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to this amazing session with some incredible experience here on the stage. I'm sure that when you leave this room, you will have known a lot about this air cargo industry, a lot more about this air cargo industry than probably you knew before. And that's what we are all going to try and do. We'll try and get as much of experience, as much of knowledge out of them that can be shared with all of you as possible, and probably pick up a few points from this deliberation, take it back, work on it, and how can we make our air cargo industry more efficient. Ladies and gentlemen, India. India is a great story, and what you see outside here, the IASC, this show, clearly demonstrates what India means to the whole world today. You can see there are exhibitors from various parts of the world who are here, which was not seen in the past. The exhibitors, largely at logistics exhibition in India, were Indian companies. Today you see so many global companies here setting up their booths. You have so many people from all around the world coming here and being part of this show, which shows the importance everybody is giving to India today. The kind of impetus which the government of India is trying to make by pushing in the manufacturing extensively in this part of the world so that we could become another major factory of the world. From the current small, minuscule share that we have in the global trade, we want to take it to double digits. China, which probably does close to 18 to 20% of the world's production, so they are known as the factory of the world. India wants to be one of the options on the China plus one strategy from all the big consuming countries of the world. We could be one of the countries. We cannot be the only one, of course. You have Vietnam. We're going to compete with Malaysia, Indonesia, Mexico, Morocco, and lots of the other Asian economies in the world. So we are all in a very, very excited space. Aviation, which is going to fuel this growth. Aviation is going to make sure that Indian air cargo delivers whatever the manufacturers of the country are here to make. And here we have, I'm not going to take much of time because I have lots of questions to this panel. I'll try and put them in a spot. So please excuse me in advance. Let me start with the airline. You know, it's so important because it's the airline that is going to play the connector role, not just in India, but across the world. We need to know what a large carrier like Air India thinks is the future for air cargo. Of course, we know the kind of orders that they placed over the next decade, 470 or 80 aircrafts that are coming in from Air India are absolutely massive. But a lot of that plan is probably on the back of passenger growth. But we want to know what is the airline thinking in terms of air cargo and how do they see the international carriers also come in and probably invest in a country like India with more capacity coming in. Ramesh, can I throw this to you?
Thank you, Yash. You can. Before I get into it, let me thank Mohit and his team to have invited Air India to become part of this event. This is the first time that Air India, as well as my team, myself, we are attending this event for the first time. I think it kind of went beyond our expectations. We are so happy to be here, to be able to connect to so many people at the same time. I think it's a very, very exciting forum, and we're very excited to be here. Thank you so much, Mohit and team. Going back to the question that you asked, Yash, how can I say it? I think let's touch possibly very high-level numbers as to where we are today and where the air cargo industry in India going to be. Some of us possibly have spoken about it in the past conferences. The size of the industry currently, both domestic and international put together, is about 3.5 million tons. And roughly 2 million tons international, 1.5 million tons domestic. We have said it many times in the past. And we also know that the industry for itself has set a target of 10 million tons to be achieved by 2030. Where we are today, from the Indian Airlines point of view, especially Air India point of view, all of you know that we have a fleet of 110, roughly 52, 53 wide-body aircrafts, and we placed an order for 470 plus aircrafts, and within that we have about 70 odd wide-bodies being delivered. Within the existing fleet, 787-8, that's the major wide-body aircraft equipment that we have. We have 31 of them. And then we have 777, LR and ER, so on and so forth. And most of the wide bodies being delivered will also be either 350s or 777s being delivered. And a lot of those aircrafts, wide body especially, will be deployed on the long haul routes to North America from India and also to Europe. And the vision that we have, also mostly driven by the passenger demand, something that Yash talked about, is to be able to connect most of the metro cities with the major cities on the western side of the world. While we say it, we also see a lot of synergies between the network expansion that is happening vis-a-vis where the commercial demand for cargo is. I think there is a lot of match. So we believe that we will be able to take advantage of the growth story of India in terms of cargo share, market share being taken away from Air India also. But in terms of the enablers for the growth in India from the airline point of view. If I need to touch on, there are three elements that come to my mind. One is the airport infrastructure itself, the kind of terminal infrastructure that we have across the country. If you look at it for the current demand of 3.5 million tons, we have a capacity of handling, in terms of terminal handling capacity of about 4.5 to 5 million tons. This is all airports put together. Majority of their capacity is kind of deployed in the metros, as all of us know. And tier 2, tier 3 are being developed by Airport Authority. But if you look at 10 million tons, and if you do nothing at all in terms of developing the airport terminal capacity, I haven't seen much progress except a couple of airports in the metro cities. I haven't seen much of progress made in terms of expanding the terminal handling capacity. We will be seriously short of that capacity. This is pure terminal handling capacity itself. If we do nothing at all, we'll be short by 6-7 million tons handling capacity shortage, which will not enable, it will unfortunately be a deterrent in terms of growth for the cargo industry in India. So that is a serious problem that we need to focus on. The other thing, we have seen around the world, the successful airports have 2, 3, 4, 5 tier cargo infrastructure around the airports, right? Starting from the terminal, the airside facilities, terminals, cargo villages, the associated services around the airport. And we've also seen in the country that some of the successful airports have, some of them have at least 2-tier structures, and it's further expanding. I think something the air cargo policy has also kind of outlined a couple of years ago is that the airports definitely have to think in terms of developing not only the terminal infrastructure to meet these 10 million tons, but also think of developing the much needed associated infrastructure around the airports for the cargo villages, warehousing, other value-added manufacturing and warehousing facilities. I see there as a need for the industry for helping us to grow to that number. The third thing, very quickly, is that even today, after so many decades of EDA coming to being, we still struggle, right? I think, implementing EDA 100% is very important. And then some airports have gone beyond that and they have implemented cargo community system. I think as part of the introduction, somebody talked about Manoj introducing that in Mumbai airport. Delhi has also done that many years ago. To me, that should be done today. That should have happened yesterday, but I think we should do that very, very quickly. The other thing, some of us in ACFI, we take great pleasure in saying, remove all the papers from all the enters in the entire supply chain. I think if you do EDI, if you do CCS across, including the regulatory agencies, to be able to remove the papers, to me, that would be a big achievement and we should do that.
Thank you, Ramesh. Thank you very much. You touched very important points of, especially talking about that we probably are going to be short of terminal capacity across the country, which is definitely a very sensitive point because if we want to grow, we definitely want to make sure that the infra and other equipments are ahead of the demand. Let me go over to, we have 2 airports, so, I'll probably shuttle these points to them. But before I get to them, because, he spoke on the airports, I would like to get, Sanjeev, probably your view first as to how do you see, an airline needs to play an anchor role. For India is trying to aspire to become a 10 million metric tons sky by 2030-31. And for that to happen, creating cargo hubs in India are extremely important. And an airline needs to play, an anchor role. If we don't have an anchor airline, we can really not probably become the cargo hub of the world that we want to do. So, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, thank you, Yash. If you can, hello. Yeah, thank you, Yash. And firstly, I would like to echo what Ramesh said. It's definitely a great event. And compliments to Mohit and the entire team for putting this together and having us here on this session. I think what Ramesh very rightly said, capacity is something that we require. But, on the role that airlines play in an airport, I would like to kind of, before I answer your question, I'd like to put a little bit of perspective to that. I remember, March 2020, when the announcement for COVID happened, and, we were kind of suspending flights. I remember we had to do some arrangements, look at, so I was driving up to the airport. There were no cabs, there were no buses. Probably mine was the only car and some other staff. We kind of drove up, got off in the forecourt. It was empty, no passengers there. Went into check-in hall, empty. Security, empty. Piers, shops, everything is empty. It seemed like a dead place. The point that I'm trying to make is, that, without the airlines, the airports have no activity. So to say, the airport is the body, the airline is the lifeline over there, But, And the relationship is very symbiotic. I mean, if the airport is the body, the airline is the blood flowing. The blood flowing in the veins is the energy, is life. Flowing outside of it, it's a wasted resource. So both have a very symbiotic relationship. Both need to work together. The airport and airline relationship is, when you talk about in the normal course, of course, there is a lot of synergy which is required, in terms of capacity planning. How do you plan your city side capacity? How do you plan your capacity for the terminals, the airside? A lot of it needs to be kind of done together. Even when we talk about, airports and cargo terminals, sometimes we get criticism for, not having enough capacity. But actually, if you see, there is no mature mechanism for somebody going and saying, look, from the industry, this is my future projection, and can you plan for this capacity? And I think this is where, the expectations from the airports will come, saying that somebody kind of plays that role, and maybe, organizations like ACFI, who represent the entire spectrum of the air cargo industry, can probably play that role of being that interface, helping airports and terminals to plan capacity. The second area that airlines and airports need to collaborate is on the customer experience. And now coming more specifically to your point on, what is it that you really need from an anchor airline or a hub airline? And this requires a different scale of engagement altogether. I mean, you're talking of, co-creating. You're talking of co-creating a network plan where you're building routes together. You're looking at, what are the missing, points in my network. You're looking at which are the busy routes which need to be, thicker, which are the missing lines which needs to be populated. There has to be a co-creation of slot planning. You've got capacity, you need to fill the peaks, you need to fill the troughs, match the schedules. There has to be a co-creation of your advocacy. I mean, there's a lot of things which today in our country, if you have a single voice, you have little chance of being heard. But when you go as a collective voice, they're very receptive to what you're saying. So I think there's a requirement for joint advocacy. There's also a requirement for joint development of products. You're talking of connection times, you're talking of transshipment products, things like that, and even joint marketing. When we talk of hubs are not built in isolation. I mean, if you're looking at creating a hub in Delhi, you're competing with the likes of Singapore or Dubai or Hong Kong. So, it has to be a collective and collaborative effort in marketing. So I think, all of it put together, the engagement with an airline as an anchor airline for creating a hub, it's a different level of engagement, and I think that process in India is evolving. It is maturing. We've seen high level of engagement happening, with the carriers that are, two of the major carriers, Indigo and Air India are hubbing out of Delhi, and we see that level of engagement happening. So I think we are on the right track, and soon we will see, globally comparable hubs emerging in India.
Lovely. Sanjeev, you picked up a few very critical points that one, that an anchor airline extremely important to make any country or a city as a hub. We've seen what Singapore Airlines did to Singapore, what Cathay did to Hong Kong, what Emirates did to Dubai, and many, many more. It is the airline that will make all the difference. And like you said, if there is no airline, you can make the most spankiest of facilities all around the world. If there's nothing to carry it around, why do we need airports? So very, very well put. And another point that Sanjeev put, which is very critical, is, and I'm sure the LSPs and everybody here will agree, that it is generally the peak hour capacity or the peak hour demand which is the challenge. So it's very difficult for anybody to augment or plan as to how much of a capacity do you really need to create so that you're able to meet the demand of tomorrow. But yeah, that's where the various associations can get together and probably brainstorm and come and throw things here. Let me go to Manoj, the big airport man of the world. So Manoj, most of the airlines are looking still at the big metros, 6 airports in the country. And do you think it's possible for airline like Air India, Indigo, or anybody to probably look at a smaller airport as a possible hub or a gateway through which they could service not just the Indian passengers, Indian cargoes, but also international cargoes?
Uh, Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Mohit, for a lovely show. I think it's second year I'm coming here, and it's scaling up year on year. All the best to Cargo Show. It's going in a great guns, and I'm sure year on year it's going to go. Uh, Good question, Yash. Ramesh spoke about the airline capacity and optimizations, and the fleets are coming in. Definitely, it's in the air. If the capacity is building up, you need to have at the ground also a capacity to be built up. Sanjeev mentioned about we need to scale up, we need to have be deeper engagement with the airline. Uh, but what we are trying to understand out here is at Adani airports, just to share with you, at Ahmedabad airport and Navi Mumbai and all the other airports where we have Jaipur, Guwahati and Trivandrum and Mangalore, we're building in capacity of 0.7 million tons of cargo capacity. Ahmedabad is coming up by April, will be going live around 250 tons, 250,000 tons. And of course, Navi Mumbai, which is going to be end of 24, will be around more than 350,000 tons of cargo capacity. So the capacity will be built up, and of course, it's very, very important is the optimization of the facility. As we see that the usage, we have been discussing with Ministry of Civil Aviation regularly that optimization of the entire infra is at the peak hours of 8 hours is being capitalized to the max, and the pressure mounts to the airline, to the terminal operator, to the freight forwarders, of course to the customs. But the utilization of 24 hours is something in the realistic way we need to. Digitization has played a major role. So what you're asking about, which airport could be and which second metro airports or the third metro airports, there are huge capacity. There are huge product requirement for those airports. Like Ahmedabad is one of the key thing which is growing up. Goa is there. Hyderabad and Bangalore, of course, have scaled up apart from 4 metro airports. But yes, Ahmedabad looks very promising. Then, of course, Lucknow is also one of the airports where a lot of product management can be looked into, as Ramesh mentioned and Sanjeev, that we need to really look into product management, which we have been ignoring at the moment. As an airport or as an airline, there are, for example, see Northeast. Northeast has a huge potential. I've been there for 10 days and, very untapped market. I mean, there are a lot of agro products, more than 15 agro products are there, which is a fine product which goes across the world. It should go to the world, but it's being consumed or decayed at our own country. So, because they don't get a better, on not to speak on the commercials, but of course they don't get the proper reach. I think it's very, very holistically, we have to really look into the deeper engagement with those exporters, connect the airlines, trying to see that the capacity utilization of the aircraft which flies to say 4 hours all flights or long on flights. We need to understand that whether we are really realistically, when we talk about 10 million tons in 2030, capacity utilization on the aircraft and capacity utilization at the ground is being in a realistic way. I think we have to go deep dive into it and go into every bits and pieces of very objective strategy, as you mentioned, that what learnings we would like to get into. I think it's more important that if you want to reach 10 million tons, it cannot be at one industry or the airline industry is going to fill in the capacity. It has to be done with the airport, freight forwarders, and of course, there are MSMEs and SMEs who are not in a position to connect the airport or the airline in a realistic way, where they do not have a provision to connect. So this is where we all have to work together, because India has a huge potential. Today, by 2030, we're going to be the largest aviation market, third largest. Domestic, we are already third. So when we want to grow into capacity building is one important, but scaling up the people to the requirement and collaboration and communication to those stakeholders who are really going to export goods and import goods is very, very important. Now, if you see Google or the Apple vendors or Dell or Foxconn and or possible of any other big companies, there are 12 big companies, global companies, are going to spend in 24 months a big investments in India. They're going to make the manufacturing unit out here. Now, if they are making a manufacturing unit, whether the logistic, when we go reverse logistics, whether we are in a position to do a complete scaling of those things at the airport, along with the airlines, whether the freight is, because air is always, you can't compete with the ocean. So it's always very important that between air cargo to grow.
Ocean cannot compete with air.
Yeah, so together if you see there, we need to really, we really have to understand that how do we compete to an extent. Of course, there's an ocean show as well. So, but still, there's a lot where cargo of air has moved into ocean freight, which needs to get converted first because that's capacity of 10 million tons. We need to really work on that. So, second, metro airports are definitely a positioning where they can be the good feeder as well as they can be a preferred airline choice to be a next choice to uplift the cargo from those stations.
Thank you. Thank you. I think the first point that he made about the addition of capacity at various airports will be music to Ramesh's ears because, that was his biggest concern when he started talking. So, all that addition capacity that you're probably building up is very welcome for the air cargo industry and the customers around the world. What you said about Northeast, which is a very highly food surplus part of the country, and if we're able to connect that, if we are able to give direct connectivity from that part of the world to, not just the other cities of India, but other parts of the world, it will propel growth in those markets.
So one more to add, just to the regulatory framework. When we talk about any international facility, of course, the message is very clear to the regulatories. When we want to really be a preferred choice, an exporter based out of, say, Guwahati or a small cities, he want to export, but he doesn't want to move it to the gateways. He would prefer to be the nearest stations where he want to uplift the cargo. Now, if the airline is providing those services, but the operating cost, the airport which has cost recovery, customs cost recovery, which is in the scale up of the same line of the metro airports, the airports, smaller airports cannot, at the beginning itself will die. So it needs to have a clear exemption so that there is a threshold. The threshold is in the same line for the smaller airports and the bigger airports, which needs to be re-looked into. And
so I think that's a policy point that we will take back with us. And for sure, I totally agree with you that you cannot impose high costs, higher royalties to smaller airports for them to flourish. Let me now move over to this side. They've been pretty much feeling ignored, so I'll get on to this side. But before I get to the customer, I will give you the last voice. You sit in the center of us, but we'll give you the last voice. Krishna, do you think the current capacity across the country on the domestic route, because you're such a large player of e-commerce, and e-commerce is what is actually driving the growth in India, the sizable growth that domestic cargo has. Do you think there is enough capacity on the smaller routes for your liking, or all the e-commerce players of the world's liking that we have?
Yeah, thanks Yash for giving this opportunity, and very insightful inputs actually, Ramesh ji, Manoj and Sanjeev ji. There is enough capacity, at least from the e-commerce side of it. We have seen there is enough capacity, but we need to see the supply side also. I think I can take quite few examples. I think Northeast has been one of our biggest, fastest growing, sector for e-commerce for all the players. But the airlines connectivity and the timings and the time is having a lot of challenges in that place. That is one of the example. Even the tier 2 and tier 3 cities today, as such, speaking from Flipkart and Myntra, those are our biggest market today. Everybody will solve for tier 1 cities. Everyone can connect on our expressways and at least match the airlines. But tier 2, tier 3, which is our biggest place, is not being served by airlines.
So, I mean, while you're saying the capacity is enough, but probably the connectivity from the manufacturer to the airports is the challenge.
That's the missing thing.
So I'm sure that with so much of investment going from the Indian government towards building the road infrastructure of the country over the next decade, I mean, I'm very confident that this problem will be solved. A newer problem will come for the air cargo because they need to compete with the surface transport, right? I mean, anything that is serviceable point to point in 6 hours. Say, for example, a manufacturer sitting in NCR needs to deliver something in Jaipur. I mean, you probably will never have the air cargo capacity being used. So that's a challenge for the airport and the airlines to make sure that the dwell time at the airports is absolutely reduced to the minimum, right?
Yes.
So let me go to the customer. Finally, we have the customer's view. I think it's so important because you are, especially in the pharmaceutical industry, India is the factory to the world where it comes to pharma, especially generics. Are you happy currently with the facilities that you get at the airports and with what the airlines give you? Because a lot of the problems happen on the ground, and a lot of times we get to hear that the customers are not really happy with what happens at the airports. and that the airlines probably sometimes are not able to give them visibility of where their cargo is or what the temperature requirement that you set is probably being managed. So efficacy of drugs is extremely important in manufacturing. So just want to hear your perspective on this.
Sure, thanks. At last you could remember the customer who's also sitting here. So thanks for that. Well, a quick introduction to where I'm coming from, because Reliance is known for many things, but certainly not for Reliance Life Sciences. And I'm happy that I'm happy for all those who don't know anything about Reliance Life Sciences, because nobody wants to buy our product. Unless a point comes in life when you have to buy a product, and at that point of time, you don't want anything else but our product, because what we produce is only the life-saving products. You won't find any of our products into any of the chemist shop ever. We are already exporting to about 60 odd countries, and we are, of course, a few thousand crores company. We are still a boutique company in the Reliance stable. Most of our products are biological products, which is the fastest growing space in terms of this. We are also into vaccines, we are also into plasma proteins, we are into pharmaceuticals, we are into diagnostics, we are into innovative technologies like the gene therapy and so on and so forth. So that's the kind of portfolio that we handle. And since about a crore of our units go out, and over 90% of them require a temperature specific condition, which is invariably 2 to 8, some of them require a different condition. We are extremely sensitive in terms of cargo. Now, what I hear is, I think the way it is spread out is capacity is created by the first 3 gentlemen, but most of that is consumed by the 4th gentleman who is sitting here. And what's left is something which we keep fighting with to somehow get our pie of share into that. Well, as rightly said by everybody, capacity is a constraint, and definitely it's a constraint. At a ground level, on a day-to-day basis, we do feel that capacity constraint. And especially as Ishpal also said, everything is what comes, the stress test is the last 5 days of the month, which is typically, I don't know, for some strange reason, all pharma companies, they become very active. The whole market becomes active in the last 5 days, 6 days of the month, and that tests everything. So if I, as an individual, capacity is definitely a problem for us, but certainty in terms of getting the slot, it becomes a constraint. So if I, as an individual, if I book a ticket on airline, I'm sure that I will get my ticket. If I book something on IRCTC, I'm sure that there is a place reserved for me. But if I book a cargo in airline, I'm not very sure whether the cargo will go with that airline on that aircraft on that day or not. It's very difficult. Just a little bit of small thing in terms of, since our cargo is temperature sensitive, there is active or passive solutions that happen. Active solution is more like a moving refrigerator, and passive solutions are the boxes with some coolant inside. And because of the nature of passive solutions, it has a very specific shelf life. It has a very specific validity. Invariably, it is between 48 hours to 72 hours on domestic market, and maybe large pallet size on international cargo, it could be 120 hours. So, and since it is a 48 hours window within which cargo has to not just reach from point A to point B, but get unpacked and get into the refrigerator. So there is a complete chain of events which is mapped for each of the consignment that goes out, and there is something sitting in our office who tracks every consignment right till it reaches the customer. So if we miss one slot in airline, just because there is a long queue waiting, just for waiting to get into the terminal, a few hours of upset, I have to take back the cargo. I just can't pick onto the next aircraft. I have to take back the cargo, unpack it, again recreate the whole chain, and then reroute it. It becomes not only a commercial issue or an operational issue, but sometimes it can become a life-saving issue, because as I said, all these products are life-saving products. So capacity is definitely, and that certainty that cargo will actually get into that. Maybe, I don't know, but it was actually music to hear to all of you that people are present to the fact that capacity is in, and a lot of active efforts are actually being happening towards that.
We are all musicians. The logisticians are all musicians. We play multiple roles. The good news is, I want to just, before, you continue, I want to give good news, So the good news is that all the problems as per the customer sit with the airlines, airports, or the domestic e-commerce players. Freight forwarders, custom brokers, truckers are not a problem to the customer. So I think you should give a big round of applause. Thank you. That was just a small joke. I think
Yes,
Surendra, you want to make a point here.
I want to make a point here
Yeah.
because there are two customers here who are asking for the capacity. Now let me tell the flip side of it.
Suddenly he's become the customer.
Yes, I was a customer. I am the biggest customer. He has acknowledged that.
From the flip card, so he's saying flip
Yeah,
side of it.
yeah.
Yeah. Now coming on to this, he is a see mine. What do you say? You say you don't get a capacity, but I get offloaded maximum times. Unpredictable
As a
offloads.
passenger?
No, not as a passenger, as a cargo. Right? I get it because the priority is given. Moment we see any life science or any critical item moving, all our shipment gets offloaded and there is no predictability to the next day. So there is always, you have a green channel. This is the feedback from my team.
So Surendra, I'll stay with you for a second.
Yeah.
You spoke about your especially your passive movements that they are your bigger problems. So one of the things that I generally get to hear from airlines and airports is that sometimes the reporting of such consignments is not appropriate, right? I mean that's something that we get to hear a lot from the airports and airlines and the other stakeholders. What is your exact need? I think if you're booked right, I think you fly as booked pretty much. I mean, most carriers have 95% plus fluence as booked ratios. Most of the good carriers at least. So what is it that would be your absolute requirement at an airport, say for example, that okay, this is what I need at the airport?
See, for example, as I said, a very simple thing like getting into the airport, getting inside the air cargo complex sometimes becomes a constraint for us. And sometimes to compensate for that, we start early and we eat into that 48 hours window. So as much as 10 hours eaten into that window is a significant, it's almost like 30-40% of my shelf life is gone just because I know that I have to get into the aircraft. I know that I want to get into it. Secondly, once you are in the cargo, we also need a cold chain space which is improving significantly but still not adequate. I think we need much more than what is available there. Third, we always keep wondering as to, if you look, it's a continuous chain. We can't say that 90% of the time we are good as long as we are getting oxygen. Just 10% of the time you shut off the entire oxygen, it doesn't work. The 10% is too much for us, we'll die. So cargo which is temperature sensitive has to have a continuous 2 to 8 degrees, for example. And tarmac, everybody knows that it's one of the things. I sometimes wonder why there can't be an equivalent of an aero bridge for a temperature cargo, which goes directly into the very near to the aircraft belly and gets into that. I'm not sure. It may be a crazy idea, but we always wonder why it doesn't happen things like this. Secondly, in terms of visibility, I mean, one is this capacity part. Secondly, visibility. There are technologies available. There are partners who are giving good I would say visibility, but it's discrete, it's discontinuous. So there are black spots in between which sometimes make our life little more miserable in terms of not available. Even if we put our, let's say, data loggers, which are active data loggers with SIM card inside, the moment it flies, okay, it's a blackout. We are not able to get any visibility. And that sometimes becomes extremely essential because although we can't do anything when the cargo is up the air, but at least we know that once it reaches the destination, there is some ambulance waiting for that to evacuate. Or maybe a replacement cargo, at least what is essential, we can send one more consignment just to compensate for that. Some such small things can make a difference.
So as much as a logistician, what I understand is usually in an airline, while it's in the air, the temperature control is pretty well managed. It's generally on the ground that a lot of the challenges, once you put it in the aircraft, it's very rare to see that there is a temperature excursion that happens at any time. I'll move on to you, Surinder. As I'll tell you a stat. For example, over the last 10 years, there's been a huge decline in bigger shipments. There is a 18% decline in plus 5,000 kilo shipments by air. Okay, which means that the smaller shipments are growing. There's a 65% increase in the consignments overall. So which means the smaller number of consignments are growing tremendously, which means e-commerce is growing. Ladies and gentlemen, pre-pandemic, the global share of e-commerce in the retail was 14%. Today is 23%. So there's a 9 basic point increase in the e-commerce share in the global retail, which means that e-commerce is going to become the driver of the global economies and for air cargo. What is it that you would like to have? You know, being such a big player of e-commerce, do you see probably airports building some fulfillment centers for you so that you're able to,
Perfect.
you know, reduce the time?
Yeah, perfect.
Maybe-
I think one of the answer you answered it, right? I had that in my mind. Uh, Specifically, yes, we are growing, and year on year, our share in air is also growing. 2024, I am sure I'm going to do 20% more in air. Reason being, my tier 2, tier 3 cities require speed. I have built all my infrastructure and capacity for tier 1 cities. So I can reach all my tier 1 customers in a day's time. Now let me specifically put it into two boxes: good to have and must have. But let me take he already answered what is good to have. I need a sortation center or a crosstalk at most of the places. It will help me, you know, improve the speed and reduce the touch points. Because most of our e-commerce warehouses are quite away from the city. And I need a point, at least for an half an hour to 1 hour, the cross-docking happens and we are out into the tier 2. That's a good to have. What is must have is have dedicated inbound and outbound lanes. That is missing in most of the airports which I have visited personally also.
For e-commerce?
For anyone, I think it's for all of us. See, what happening in these airports, we don't have an inbound and outbound lane. Everything happens at one dock there. Maybe it's by design or it's by chaos there at that point of time. Because everything is a rush. I need to be there before 4 hours. I need to be there before 2 hours. And there is a CPD, customer promise delivery, missing. And I need to connect. That's the number one point. Number 2 point, the weight, measurement of a weight, the volumetric weight. What we measure as a volumetric weight at our place versus what happens on the airline, there is a difference. Normally we tend to see that, you know, airlines records it little bit higher than what we have. There we end up into the economics, and, you know, my future plan will go for us. That's the second point what we see. Number 3 we see is there is no a line to follow. It actually gets into the chaos of multiple people trying to get the slot and move on. So unpredictable offloading, that also is happening in most of the airports. People and trolleys shortage. I'm coming to the specific points. Some airports there is a trolley shortage, some airports there is a people shortage. Going to Calcutta, there is always X-ray machine shortage. So either it switches off or it doesn't operate. So such things, the reliability, what my person on the ground there, being there at that point, finds difficulty in terms of running the day-to-day show, which impacts our planning and the next round. Right. So these are specifics here. Last point, in terms of the DGCA, the dangerous goods moving. In
Not DGCA.
DG goods, right? Which gets reports to DGCA there, right? Here what happens here is that certain items which actually can comfortably move gets alerted, you know, it's a false alarm which comes in, due to which, you know, the entire shipment gets offloaded. In e-commerce, anything will move. A battery bank is dangerous, but a box of specs is not dangerous, but that also gets offloaded. Such things comes in e-commerce. It's a world which is around 8 crore SKUs which will come in. So these are 3-4 points what I wanted to table upon. The facilities, the infra, digitization, program managing that entire thing, holding the entire shipment in a very smooth way is required in most of the airports what we are. We are evolving, I know that.
Yeah.
But this is one important aspect.
Thank you, Krishna. I think you've given a great idea. So if tomorrow both these airports implement a fulfillment center or a sorting center for you, the commission should go to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just
not
to
you,
add to Sanjeev sir's
and
down.
maybe Mohit can claim a part of it, right? Because it happened at his program. So
yeah, just to add, I just want to add one point. Sanjeev ji asked one
we'll
question.
charge you for this, huh?
Yeah, Pakka,
Itna
I'm
time
ready
nahi
to
tha.
pay. Yeah, he said, is there a projection? You asked that. There should. Yes, we do have a lot of projection. I have a very solid projection, line-wise, year-wise for next 4 to 5 years on how we are going to operate. With that, I think we can collaborate to build a very strong supply chain.
Surely, we need a lot of suggestions from customers to tell us what exactly is needed. It is forums like these and, you know, other engagements that can help, you know, the airports, the airlines to augment capacities. Manoj, you wanted to say something here?
Just to add what is mentioned, of course, year on year, the e-commerce industry at the domestic sector is growing at a 27 to 37%, 10% difference. But it's growing in a big pace, for sure. Of course, the impact at the airport is definitely e-commerce drives the whole volumes, rather. But the challenge, one of the key challenge, of course, he mentioned about the right points, but there is an other side of the story is 2007, we started the first common user terminal at Hyderabad. So it's part of that process. From 2007 till now, I think it's most of the airports are facing same challenge that domestic industry, ready for carriage condition, the cargoes doesn't come.
Yeah.
So everything is piled up at the airport, at the terminal, at the truck dock, and there is a complete dumping of co-loads, and then it gets consolidated into one shipment. And every activity which if you see there is a complete clear drawn process of the international, but on the domestic side, it is the reverse. And we have tried our level best, Sanjeev. I think is still not able to find solutions, but of course what we have done is, as he mentioned about fulfilling center is one part, because e-commerce is much more organized. So they have a one shipment which consolidates of multiple loads. But there are 50% of the loads which comes in and it's been dumped at the airport. So, and then after an hour, the cargo gets consolidated as one available. And that becomes a big challenge for any terminal operator in the world.
Sure.
You will definitely have either the cargo comes on a ready for carriage, or if the vehicles are coming in with a one shipment, much organized, but there are a lot of improvement with organized domestic air cargo agents are doing a fantastic job. But digitization plays much more smoother in the operation flow. But still there is a challenge where Flipkart will not have an issue, but there are other players who are equal volumes of cargo moving. Of course, every airline faces the same challenge because the pressure is mounts on the X-ray machines. Then again on the departure side. So that's the reason the cargo is supposed to come 4 hours before. So everything is reversed, but I think one process gets into, I think the domestic volumes get smoother and much faster. Correct me if I'm not.
Good, Manoj. So I'm going to, just move over to Ramesh. And Ramesh, I mean, I'll take this discussion entirely now to tech. Operationally, I will leave these things for us to probably discuss offline and see where the improvements lie. I'm sure there are areas that we can all work on and to improve. So on the tech side, as a carrier, how do you see current bit of challenges and what can the improvements be in terms of data transfer to you? We heard the customer talk about probably his issue of getting into the airport, what time they need to leave, etc. So is the tech connectivity between the carrier, the customer, the carrier, the airport, carrier, the freight forwarder, the bus custom broker, is that okay? Or do you think there is a possible improvement, there's a possibility to improve that? Because an airline can only deliver as good as what it gets, right? The quality of cargo that you get, the quality of information that you get, the documentation that you get, because every empty space that goes is perishable and you lose revenue, right? So what is your thought on, a digital transfer between the carrier and the other stakeholders?
Okay, so the way I look at it is, fortunately we have within the industry IATA defined standard EDI messaging framework. Globally, that has been very successful over the decades. But what we have seen, the degree of success varies from domestic to international, unfortunately. Domestic, we have not been very successful. I'll tell you the reasons also as to why we have not been successful. But even in the international freight market wise within India, the EDI penetration has been very poor. And unfortunately, the EDI interface is only within a few stakeholders on the supply chain side, which is airlines, CTOs, airport operators, and freight forwarders to some extent. Unfortunately, EDI, unless the shipper has the ability to transmit and receive the messages from the airline or any other stakeholder, some of them do successfully, but if the shipper doesn't have the capability, then the shipper has a limitation of receiving any updates from the airline or the freight forwarding community. But even from the airline point of view, from my experience over the last couple of months of managing the airline, the system that we are using currently, unfortunately, although had the capability, but for some reason the airline never used it. That's one challenge. So many airlines, they don't have the capability, right, to even today. Some airlines that have the capability never used it and they never switched on because it costs money to have the EDI implemented. The large ones obviously have the ability and they have implemented worldwide. But the challenge that I have seen is, although I have switched on, I'm willing to pay the cost of it, but I haven't seen many people coming forward and say, okay, I will start interfacing with you. The airports, it includes airports, freight forwarding companies. It has been a big effort and big struggle from the airline point of view to make it happen. And I have seen that happening. Even after six to 7 months of struggle, the EDI penetration that I see across the network is only some 25-30%, which is very unfortunate. The major airports comply, but a lot of the small too. I think going forward, this is a limitation, although this has been very successful when the technology was not very advanced, let's say 25-30 years ago. I think now technology has become cheaper. There are much better technologies available. I think we need to change the gaze actually to become very open-ended in terms of being able to interface with anybody, anytime. I think that's what we need to move to. I haven't seen many companies doing it, but I think industry has to move to that, leave the standards out, become very flexible, and then start interfacing with everybody. But very, very importantly, I think in a different forum, we were talking about implementation of AI, etc. To me, that is going to open a lot of doors, right? I think this will kind of define, AI will also help us in terms of forecasting, which is a handicap. It should be able to tell us what my demand will be tomorrow, a couple of months later, a couple of weeks later, and to be able to help me to plan better the resources. So the challenges that the Reliance person talked about, why kind of offload? I think one of the challenges that all the airlines see is not to have the capability to foresee. Right? I don't know what my demand will be tomorrow, day after tomorrow. So my capacity is limited. And they also don't have the ability to price the product correctly. Right? I think AI applications will in future, very, very soon, will solve a lot of these issues in terms of capacity management, pricing, recovery. Today I have a problem in recovery. I offload something, I'm not able to plan that better. So you, as a result, you have a problem. And then also customer service. So I see things changing very quickly in the next 5 years' time, but today we have a lot of limitations. So we've been successful, but with a lot of limitations, but with the advent of technology and technology becoming cheaper, 4 or 5 years later, I think the entire landscape in terms of adopting technology within the air cargo industry will be very, very different. For good.
Good points, Ramesh. Availability, capability, adaptability, and ultimately connectivity. We aspire to be the top 3 global economies. We are going to be the top 3 aviation economy. We are aspiring to get to 10 million tons. But all that will happen on the back of this relay race. This relay that we play together. We need to create the best supply chains of the world. Our supply chain, Indian supply chains need to compete with the supply chains of Malaysia, China, Vietnam, Mexico, etc. For us to be the option of cargo plus China plus one, we need to work together. So right from the customer to the freight forwarder to custom broker, trucker, airports, airline, everybody needs to be well integrated to do that. I'm going to go to you, Sanjeev. Wait, I'm not going to take technology now because we are extremely short of time. We have a lot of time. He doesn't. He has a flight to catch. So Sanjeev, since we want to go to 10 million tons, one of the key aspects that we've been talking about is creating cargo hubs in India. Probably a transshipment policy. We do see that's a huge, massive opportunity for us. All the global big airports of the world have a very sizable share of transshipment in their share of business. In India, it's, I think, in single digits. We, I think, have 6 or 7% at an all-India level on transshipments. So what do you think? What are your thoughts, being a major airport in Delhi, of how Indian airports could probably become a cargo hub, really? And are the policies in place? We're short of time, so...
Yeah, thank you. And I think, listening to everybody, just a few things I kind of want to respond to before I answer your question very specifically. So, in terms of capacity building, as GMR airports today, we have close to about 2 million tons of handling capacity across all our airports, which is handling more, basically it can cater to more than 50% of what India does at the moment. But, when we look, we have been very focused on developing hubs and, Delhi, of course, designated as a pilot air cargo hub project, as well. What really, in addition to hubs, you need tier 2 and 3. And I think tier 2 and 3, one of a different perspective I want to bring, that when it comes to cargo, you don't really need a runway and an airport. Actually, you can have just terminals. And this is where, where there is no proximity to an airport, air freight stations are a great solution. And I repeat...
We have a very happy person right on the front desk.
Yes, and I can repeat that where there is no proximity to an airport, air freight stations is a great solution. Because what you need is, you just need to provide strong multimodal capability, you need to provide, some compatibility for truck handling, servicing equipment, packaging which has the rigor of, managing the road and the air. And of course, technology to kind of manage that. So that's one side. That we can really scale up our cargo handling capacity in the country if we kind of look at these alternate options as well. The second thing, I think I also realized there's a greater need for engagement, and I compliment, for Mohit and the team for putting this together, because I realized that some of the things, like Surinder, you were talking, my truck comes and, it stands over there. In fact, Delhi Airport, about 5 years back, was the first airport in the country to have a truck slot management where you can electronically go and book your slot and actually you come at the time, when you book. So, you're not waiting in the queue, your life-saving, temperature sensitive goods are not waiting somewhere, just to waiting in a queue. So that's, probably it's a little awareness that we need to create. Another thing you mentioned about, is there an aero bridge which can, take your goods from the terminal? But there is, and again, we were the first airport to do a cool dolly, which basically takes your stuff right from the cargo terminal, from a temperature control zone, across the tarmac, in a temperature control, onto the aircraft. So those kind of things are there. I mean, these are very few. And the point that we talked about domestic problems, I think domestic problems, yes, we know there's a problem with RFC and all that, but what we realized is you can't change the world, but you can change the people who are willing to change. So we've just actually just started a process where people who are willing to electronically provide advance information on the domestic side, we will take it, we'll give them a green channel, and we can expedite that. And we find there are people who are taking the lead, and it's working. We just, in fact, last week we did the launch of that. So I think things are changing for good. Coming to your question on the hub, I think another good news. I think the transshipment. I was just looking at the numbers last month. We at Delhi Airport are going into double digits. We're not in single digits anymore. So I think, and that's a result of, because a few years back we put a completely airside transshipment facility with customs and security, working alongside, and we've seen the numbers grow. So there's a lot of focus. If we really want to benchmark, we want to be beat the Dubais and the Subai and the Singapores of this world. We really need to be a notch above. And I think we've got a lot of collaboration. We're moving ahead, but there's lots to be done. So I think there is one area, of course, on transshipment policy advocacy, which we need to be working on. How do we work closer with security teams and see how do we find a solution which is secure, but still it kind of meets the need of the business. And I'm sure it's not just Delhi, but other airports can also be in the double-digit number. So we are on the right track, but there's lots of work still to be done. Thank you.
Can't agree more. We have to be a bigger transshipment hub. If we want to get to 10 million and more, there is a huge possibility. India is a great originator of cargo. India is a great consumer of cargo. So there is a huge possibility. We are really short of time. Sanjeev, what's with you? Tell me. I can go for another hour.
You'll have to get me a ride from here to the airport on a helicopter.
We'll get you from
not
Star Trek.
Not on the Mumbai roads.
We'll tell Captain Spock to beam you up and put you at the airport. But I think Mohit is standing here with a gun on his shoulder. So I have lots of questions. I want to throw more tech questions, cargo community system, and ask him. The audience, yes, exactly. So just one. For a short of time, one question from the audience. You have a great panel on stage. Don't ask me any question, but you can ask them. Anyone? No? Everyone wants to go home? So good. Thank you very much, my lovely panel. It was really awesome to have you here. Of course, we wanted to cover more, but we all love our topic. We love to tell what good air cargo brings to the business. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you, and you must go and tell the shippers of the world, that please use air cargo more. It will help their businesses to grow faster. If you really want your business to grow more than what your competitors do, use air cargo. You will see how much of a propeller you will put behind your business, and you will really give it a good steam. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you, Mohit. Thank you, Ayushi. Thank you, everybody, for having us here. It was a great engagement. Thank you. She wants me to sit down.
Yes, absolutely. We can't let you go without being felicitated, for sure.
Okay.
Wow, that was a great cross-industry dialogue. The collective expertise and insights of stakeholders will truly shape the trajectory of this vital industry.